I learned how to leave early in life. Not dramatically, not with slammed doors or raised voices, just quietly. I learned how to pull away before anyone noticed I was getting close. How to pack my emotions into something small enough to carry alone. How to disappear without actually going anywhere. People thought I was steady. I wasn't. I was just practiced. The apartment was quiet in the way only early mornings are. No traffic yet, no voices, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. I stood by the window, coffee untouched, watching the city wake up. I had built a life that looked complete from the outside. Good job. Clean place, no chaos, and absolutely no one who could ask too much of me. That was the rule. Don't let anyone stay long enough to expect something real. Her name was Claire. I didn't meet her in a dramatic way. No sparks, no movie moment. She was just there. Same elevator, same building, different mornings. At first, we only exchanged nods. Then, good morning. Then comments about the weather that didn't mean anything but felt like they might. I noticed the details before I noticed the risk. The way she held her coffee like it might fall. The way she listened more than she spoke. The way silence didn't make her uncomfortable. That should have warned me. One morning, the elevator stopped between floors. Lights flickered. That awkward pause when you're not sure if you should say something or pretend nothing's happening. She laughed softly. Not nervous, not forced, just honest. "Guess we're stuck," she said. I shrugged. Could be worse. She looked at me, curious. "Is that your default response to most things?" I didn't answer right away. That was my mistake. We talked until the elevator moved again. Nothing important. Work. The building. How long we'd both lived there. But something shifted. The kind of shift you don't notice until later, when it's already too late to undo. We started walking out together. Not every day. Just enough. Then coffee. Then dinners that weren't called dates. Then silence that felt shared. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was in control. I always told myself that. Claire didn't push. She didn't ask invasive questions or demand explanations. She let things unfold at their own pace. That was worse, because there was no pressure to resist. One night, we sat on my couch, shoes off, city lights spilling through the window. She was telling a story about her childhood. I wasn't really listening. I was watching the way her hands moved when she spoke. Relaxed, unafraid, like she expected to be heard. She stopped mid-sentence. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said automatically. She studied me for a moment. "You always say that," she said, "but your shoulders don't." Something tightened in my chest, that familiar urge to retreat, to joke, to change the subject, to stand up and find a reason to leave the room. Instead, I stayed still. That was new. "I'm not great at..." I paused, searching for the right word. Being seen. She didn't react, didn't lean in, didn't reassure me. She just nodded. "That makes sense," she said. No one had ever said that to me before. Not "you'll be fine," not "don't be like that." Just "that makes sense." Later that night, after she left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart racing for no reason, because something had changed, and change meant exposure. I started noticing patterns I'd ignored before. How I always left first. How I never talked about my past. How every relationship I'd ever had ended quietly without confrontation. I hadn't been unlucky. I'd been consistent. A week later, she asked me something simple. "Do you want to come to dinner with my friends this weekend?" My first instinct was to say no. Not because I didn't want to go, because going meant being real. Being placed in a context I couldn't control. I smiled. "Let me think about it," I said. She smiled back. "Okay. No pressure." Again. That night, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't afraid of commitment. I was afraid of being known and still not being chosen. And I didn't know if I was ready to face that. Not confidently, but I said it. And the moment the word left my mouth, I felt it. That familiar tightening in my chest. Regret mixed with relief. Dinner with her friends wasn't supposed to matter. It was just a meal. Just people. but I treated it like a test I hadn't studied for. All week, I found excuses to stay busy. Longer hours at work, late workouts, anything to keep my mind from drifting toward Saturday. Because thinking about it meant acknowledging something dangerous, that I cared. Claire didn't bring it up again. She never did. She let things exist without hovering over them. That was her quiet power. Saturday came anyway. It always does. Her friends were normal, too normal. No interrogation, no awkward silence. They laughed easily, spoke about plans, talked about the future like it was something you could touch. I stayed on the edge of the room, beer in hand, observing, always observing. Claire moved differently around them, lighter, more open. She didn't need to explain herself. She belonged. And standing there watching her, something uncomfortable surfaced. I wasn't sure I could ever be part of that world. Later that night, walking back to our building, she asked quietly, "So, was it as bad as you imagined?" I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "No," I said, "it wasn't." She smiled. That was all. That should have been the moment I leaned in. Instead, I pulled back. The days after that, I became efficient. Shorter conversations, fewer late nights, more distance wrapped in politeness. I told myself I was just recalibrating. I was lying. Claire noticed. Of course she did. She always noticed before I was ready to admit anything. One evening, she stood in my doorway, coat still on. "You're doing that thing," she said. I frowned. "What thing?" "The disappearing one." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to turn it into a joke, but something in her voice stopped me. It wasn't accusatory. It was tired. "I'm just busy," I said. She nodded slowly. "Busy is fine," she said. "Absent isn't." Silence filled the space between us. Not awkward, heavy. "I don't chase people," she continued, "and I don't force closeness." I stayed quiet. "I just need to know," she said, "if I should stop reaching." There it was. The question I always avoided. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't demanding anything. She was offering honesty and asking for the same. I wanted to tell her everything. About the way my father left without explanation, about the relationships that ended because I never fully showed up, about the fear that if someone truly knew me, they'd eventually walk away anyway. Instead, I said nothing, and that was the answer. She exhaled slowly, not angry, disappointed. "That's okay," she said. "I just needed clarity." She left that night without another word. No drama, no slammed door, just quiet footsteps down the hallway. The kind of ending I was good at creating. The apartment felt different after that. Too quiet, too still. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It accused me. Days passed, then weeks. I told myself it was for the best, that I'd avoided something complicated, that I'd protected myself. But protection started to feel a lot like punishment. I caught myself reaching for my phone more than once, stopping, starting again, deleting messages before they were finished. One night, I ran into her in the elevator. The same place it had all started. She looked steady, not distant, just resolved. We nodded. That old habit resurfacing. "Hey," she said, "hey." The elevator moved. No small talk this time, no safety net. "I hope you're doing okay," she said finally. "I am," I lied. She studied my face. She always did that. "Good," she said, and I knew she didn't fully believe me. As she stepped out on her floor, she turned back. "You're not broken," she said. "You're just afraid of being seen." The doors closed before I could respond. I stood there alone, staring at my reflection in the metal walls, because for the first time I realized something painful. I wasn't alone because people left. I was alone because I never stayed. I didn't know how to fix that. Not because I was restless, because something inside me had finally stopped running. Her words kept repeating in my head. "You're not broken. You're just afraid of being seen." I'd spent years convincing myself those were the same thing. The next morning, the city felt louder, not in sound, in presence. People moving with intention, knowing where they were going, or at least pretending they did. I went to work, answered emails, attended meetings, but everything felt slightly out of sync, like I was watching my life from half a step behind. At lunch, I sat alone, staring at my phone. Her name stayed there, untouched, for a long time. I thought about all the times I'd left things unfinished. Conversations, relationships, apologies. I told myself closure was overrated. That time would soften the edges. Time doesn't soften anything. It just makes the weight more familiar. I didn't text her that day or the next. Not because I didn't want to, because I was afraid of doing it wrong. 3 days later, I saw her again. This time, it wasn't accidental. She was sitting in the small park near our building, the one with the crooked benches and uneven trees, the kind of place people only go when they need space. I stood there longer than I should have, watching, debating. The old instinct to turn away tugged hard. I ignored it. "Claire," I said. She looked up, surprised, not guarded, just present. "Hi," she replied. A pause settled between us, not heavy, waiting. "I owe you something," I said. She raised an eyebrow slightly. "Okay." I sat down, left space between us. Not because I wanted distance, because I didn't know how close was allowed. "I'm not good at this," I said. "At what?" "Letting people see me when I'm not sure I'll be enough." She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't rush me. "I disappear," I continued, "not because I don't care, but because caring feels like giving up control." That was the truest thing I'd said in years. "I don't expect anything from you," I added quickly. "I just didn't want silence to be the last thing between us." She studied the ground for a moment, then looked back at me. "I don't need perfection," she said. "I need presence." I nodded, because for the first time I understood the difference. We talked longer than I expected, about nothing monumental. Work, the building, the weather, but underneath it all, something shifted. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. "So," she said, "what happens now?" I felt the familiar urge to keep it vague, to stay safe. Instead, I said, "I don't know." Then I added, "But I'm willing to stay long enough to find out." She smiled, not wide, not triumphant, just hopeful. We didn't walk home together, not yet. This wasn't a movie. It was slower than that. But that night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to escape my own thoughts. Some changes aren't loud. They don't announce themselves. They just ask you to stop leaving. I used to believe strength meant staying detached, unmoved, untouched. Now I know better. Strength is staying when it would be easier to disappear. And this time, I stayed.